Now, earlier this week, the tribunal did also scrutinize the exchange of text messages and emojis and their interpretation with Dr. Zachary Dokrat, a forensic and legal linguist. Let's take a look at, more broadly, just how text and emojis can constitute sexual harassment in the context of the law, of course, in this digital age as well, with associate at digital law company Rorke Wilson. Rorke, thank you so much for the time. Appreciated this morning. The one word that comes to mind when one takes a look at just texting emojis or anything of that sort could be ambiguity. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, that's the name of the game when it comes to emojis. And that's what the experts already told us in these tribunal hearings, that one really important aspect to look at when we're considering what someone could take from emoji is what's their context? Who are they and what do they consider this emoji to be? I mean, because emojis are so diverse in their application and in their meaning from one generation to the next. There's a completely different lexicon on what these things mean.
So how does that impact this case, do you think? And I don't mean just lawfully only, but I mean in the context of understanding what type of conversation they were trying to have and what it is that could be interpreted from each emoji. Is that going to be circumstantial and fully interpreted then by the court itself and could be interpreted differently by a different court then?
Well, when we look at the case law, I mean, it's not just South Africa where this is happening. When it comes to sexual harassment, it is. But emojis have been interpreted by courts for, I think, at least 10 years now. And the general theme that we see happening when we see courts interpreting these emojis, it's they're looking at the context. They're not just looking at these emojis in a bubble, because then an eggplant is just an eggplant. But if you look at emojis in the entirety of the context, they can then start to carry sexual connotations. And especially to someone who's maybe a bit more native to the language of emojis, a sexual emoji that's unwelcome can really constitute harassment and really make someone feel uncomfortable and unwelcome in a work environment.
Yeah, so how does one know then the kind of context that this should all be carried in? And what I mean by that is, if I was to send you an emoji, how do I know the kind of way that you would take it compared to the kind of way that I perhaps meant it?
Oh man, I hate to give such a vague definition, but my answer to that would be to quote an American justice from 1962 when talking about pornography, and he said, "I know it when I see it." And when it comes to sexual harassment and then a harassing message, very often you look at that message and you can quite easily know that you're looking at harassment. And quite often it's the context. I mean, one case that comes to mind is actually a South African case, and this wasn't emoji based, but it was a man who'd harassed a woman after work, and he'd been asking her to come and spend more time with him. So after a work dinner, come and spend more time with him, and then started asking her about her boyfriend, and how close they are, and whether she's in contact. Now, generally, that can be just a question that you ask someone. Maybe you are asking, about their partner and wanting to learn more about them. But in that context, it was quite obvious. If you're asking someone when you're a little bit tipsy after a dinner, hey, how close are you after your boyfriend? There's an intention behind that, and emojis can add that intention on.
So does that mean that emojis and texts like that are enough to constitute a case, do you think, then, in the court of law?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, if we look to Canada, they've taken a thumbs up emoji to conclude a contract. So the emojis can really mean anything nowadays, and that's because that's what we're using them for. We use them as a tool of communication to send information to one another. And if that information we're sending is harmful, you can be held legally responsible for that, even if it's just a little picture.
So what are the legal protections then against inappropriate text, do you think, at this stage? Are there enough of those? Is there enough understanding both ways that if you send a particular text in a particular way and a particular emoji is used, it will be defined as something exact?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I mean, what's great about our legal system is it's very flexible, and we don't need to create any new laws to protect this. I mean, Mengo here can rely on her employment legal framework. If it's someone who isn't employing you, you've got harassment law, you've got criminal injury, you've got basically every other law that stops us from doing something bad can usually be applied to our emojis. Just the problem, unfortunately, in South Africa is that our legal system and our justice system is really overrun. So it's the laws on paper are amazing, but it's applying them and getting people the justice that they need where we really start to struggle.
Yeah. So what about social media companies? How much do they perhaps need to either educate, help understand, or even pull back on some of the emojis that are available?
Oh, I don't think this is really on the social media companies. They don't really have much say over the emojis. This is all down to the Unicode consortium. But I don't think the answer here is to take away a tool of communication. I think the answer is just to be something that I love to say on Newzroom Afrika, and that's just be a lacquer person, you know? So long as you're a good person, no bad will come your way. And yeah, when it comes to emojis, it's a tool of communication. So taking away a tool isn't really gonna stop people from being horrible at the end of the day.
Yeah, you know, Rorke, I wonder, and I don't know, I don't think you can see me right now, but if I was to use the emoji under which I literally close my face, all right, and I use my hands and I close my face, to somebody that is maybe me being shy, to somebody else that is somebody saying they're embarrassed, to somebody else, does it not lead to too much confusion that maybe there should be just a stringent way of assessing this?
Oh, I mean, it's difficult to create a stringent way of assessing it when, as you say, for every single person, every emoji means something completely different. And this is why when these cases make it to courts, they really try to look at the entirety of the context. I mean, there was a case when someone had posted about a lawyer who was under review, and someone tweeted at them and asked what happened, and they sent back the zipper-faced emoji. And the court looked at the entire context of them, and they said, well, that zipper-faced emoji said you were holding back on information that was dirty on that person, and you didn't want to say it in a public space.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that is surprising that even when you're choosing to keep quiet, that could be seen in the opposite way here as well. So, in your opinion, does that mean then that we, in this case that we're talking about then with the Judge President Mbenenge, that there could certainly be a whole lot of blame put on the Judge President, or in the context of just that conversation, that it will be seen as very relevant here?
Well, if you're asking me as a Gen Z who looked at those texts, those are some of the thirstiest messages that I've ever seen. I think it's very difficult to deny that he was angling for something in those texts there. And I definitely think that, I mean, we've already seen that coming forth now with the expert opinion, but I think we're going to be seeing more of that opinion coming forward, especially if we look at Mengo's responses, which were very perfunctory, I want to say. She was trying to brush off with humor.